The Tellarite soldier's head sailed through the air, cleanly severed by Austin Thomas's ancient sword. Around him, the rusted hulks of wrecked hovercrafts littered the barren plains of Arcturus, remnants of the once thriving human colony. In 2247, Earth and its settlements lay in ruins, crushed beneath the might of the technologically superior Tellarites. The ruthless alien warlord Murloc subjugated humanity, reducing them to scattered bands of rebels on the brink of annihilation. But hope kindled when Austin, scavenging the colony's remains, discovered a cryptic sword of unknown alloy. Adorned with mystic runes, the blade resonated with inexplicable power. Compelled by its mystery, Austin trained in secret, mastering forms that unlocked the sword's hidden potential. An energy shield and plasma bolts, ancient techniques fused with advanced tech. Now, confronted by the humiliated patrol leader's men, Austin brandished the archaic weapon. Tellarite laughter died in throats as he sliced through polymer armor and bisected plasma rifles. It ended as quickly as it began. The aliens lay dead, their blood mingling with crimson dust. Whispers of the victory spread like wildfire across slave camps and shantytowns. A mere man, armed with sword against the galaxy's most advanced race? Had their liberator emerged at last? Seizing on budding unrest, Austin led raids on Tellarite outposts, his deft blade carving a path for human defiance. Alarmed reports flooded to Murloc, resistance growing, led by primitive sword-wielder. Enraged, the warlord raised a mighty armada and legions to scour Arcturus clean of the insurgents. His prize, the insolent swordsman's head. Undaunted, Austin rallied the rebels for a final stand. The sword had given them a chance. Now they must seize it. Against overwhelming odds, they ready for battle. All rests on the edge of a blade. Humanity's fate hangs in the balance. As the rebellion gained momentum, Austin spent every spare moment honing his skills with the ancient sword. Each training session unlocked new secrets, expanding his understanding of the weapon's capabilities. During a raid on a heavily fortified Tellarite weapons depot, a stray plasma bolt struck the blade and vanished, absorbed into the gleaming metal. Austin swung the sword, instinctively redirecting the stored energy back at the Tellarite defenders. Their own plasma fire rebounded, searing through armor and flesh. News of this development electrified the resistance. The sword could turn the aliens' most advanced weapons against them. Morale soared among the ragtag rebels. Tellarite supply lines faltered as Austin led precision strikes, the sword nullifying their technological edge. However, not all Tellarites reveled in Murloc's iron-fisted rule. Zara, a disillusioned technician, reached out to Austin covertly. Though suspicion clouded their initial contact, her inside intel on weak points and logistics proved invaluable. A tentative partnership formed as Austin glimpsed the conflict's nuances through Zara's perspective. Murloc seethed as reports of rebel victories flooded in. He tasked General Kresh, a coldly calculating strategist, with eliminating Austin and his followers. Advanced surveillance drones darkened the skies while sophisticated tracking tech swept for signs of resistance hideouts. Austin countered by launching daring missions to dismantle the Tellarite sensor network. Zara's knowledge guided surgical strikes, keeping them one step ahead of Kresh's hunters. But tragedy struck when Marcus, Austin's lieutenant and cherished friend, fell into enemy hands during a sabotaged operation. The rebel leader agonized over an impossible choice: endanger everything in a reckless rescue or sacrifice Marcus to safeguard the resistance. Honor and loyalty won out. Austin devised an audacious infiltration of the fortified prison complex. Zara's intel proved critical as Austin's hand-picked team sliced through layered security, the ancient sword neutralizing force fields and sentry guns. At the operation's climax, Austin confronted General Kresh in the prison's heart. The Tellarite commander revealed a chilling truth. His people were analyzing the sword, developing countermeasures to neutralize its power. Alarms blared, and plasma fire filled the corridors as Austin's team fought free with Marcus. They fled the closing noose of Kresh's forces, escaping by a razor's edge. But Marcus carried ominous news from his captivity, whispers of a Tellarite superweapon nearing completion, designed to negate the sword's energy manipulation and quash the rebellion for good. Grim dedication settled over the resistance as Austin outlined a perilous sabotage mission into the heart of Tellarite-held territory. The ancient sword had given them hope, but now they raced against time to preserve that fragile chance at freedom. Austin prepared to lead the desperate operation personally, knowing it could be humanity's last stand. As the desperate plan took shape, Austin pored over Zara's schematics of the Tellarite anti-sword weapons facility. The gleaming blade rested on the table before him, ancient runes pulsing with restless energy. He traced a finger along the cool metal, his mind racing through the daring infiltration to come. Jace, the defected Tellarite engineer, pointed out key vulnerabilities in the base's defenses. Their power grid has weak points here and here. A couple well-placed plasma bolts from your sword should overload the system and open a path inside. Austin nodded, committing the details to memory. He turned to Marcus, his trusted lieutenant. We'll need to split up once we breach the perimeter. You take a team and plant explosives at these structural junctions. Jace and I will head for the main research lab and gather intel on their anti-sword tech. As the rebel strike force geared up, an air of unwavering persistence settled over the base. They all knew the stakes. This mission could turn the tide of the war or doom humanity to eternal subjugation. Under cover of darkness, Austin led his team through the dense jungle surrounding the weapons facility. The sword's energy shield shimmered, cloaking their approach from Tellarite sensors. At the outer wall, Austin channeled the blade's power and unleashed searing plasma bolts at the weak points Jace had identified. The night lit up with arcing electricity as the power grid overloaded, shorting out force fields and plunging sections of the base into darkness. "Move in now!" Austin hissed over the comlink. His team darted through the breach, splitting into two groups as planned. Marcus and his saboteurs melted into the shadows of the facility's underbelly, placing charges at load-bearing columns. Simultaneously, Austin and Jace crept towards the fortified heart of the base, the research labs developing Tellarite countermeasures to the ancient sword's might. As they neared their target, a squad of guards materialized from a side corridor, elite warriors encased in prototype armor, shimmering with repulsor fields. Austin's plasma bolts splashed harmlessly against the energy shields, eliciting laughter from the Tellarite soldiers. "I've seen those shields before," Jace whispered urgently. "They're vulnerable to rapid, sustained impacts. Hit them hard and fast." Austin launched into a blinding flurry of strikes, the sword flashing in his hands as he rained blow after blow on the guards' shields. Hairline fractures spiderwebbed across the energy fields as they strained to repel the relentless assault. With a final, shattering strike, the shields failed and the sword clove through armor and bone. Alarms blared as Austin kicked open the lab doors. Rows of workstations flickered with holographic schematics. The Tellarite's anti-sword initiative laid bare. Jace rushed to a terminal, fingers flying over the controls as he downloaded classified files. "I'm setting a data worm to corrupt their research stores. Should buy us some time, but we need to get this intel back to base," Jace called out over the klaxons. Austin stood guard at the door, sword flashing as he cut down Tellarite reinforcements, swarming from deeper in the facility. Plasma bolts sizzled past, deflected by the blade's shimmering energy shield. "Data secured," Jace yelled, tucking a glowing data drive into his armor. Austin nodded sharply and triggered his comlink. "All units, fall back to extraction point Delta. Repeat, fall back to Delta. We are leaving." Blast doors rumbled shut, sealing off the lab. The shriek of rending metal echoed through the halls as Marcus's explosives tore through structural supports, setting off chain reactions throughout the facility. Austin channeled the sword's energy and slashed a molten hole through the wall, barely wide enough for him and Jace to dive through. Smoke choked the corridors as they sprinted towards the hangar bay, the facility quaking and crumbling around them. Marcus and the other rebels materialized from branching passageways, falling into step with Austin's group as they neared their final obstacle, a sealed hangar door blocking their escape. "Hold them here," Austin commanded, bracing himself and raising the ancient blade. His body tensed as he drew deeply on the sword's reservoirs of power, crackling tendrils of plasma webbing out and enveloping his form. With a primal roar, he unleashed a blinding torrent of energy, the searing plasma blast punching a ragged opening in the reinforced door. Tellarite weapons fire stitched deadly patterns through the smoke as the rebels leapt through the breach. Dropships screamed to life around them, repulsor engines howling as the strike team boarded. Plasma bolts hammered the hulls, barely held at bay by the ship's flickering shields. Austin and Jace tumbled into the lead dropship, gasping for breath. As the hatch slammed shut and the ship clawed for the sky, Austin eyed the data drive clutched in Jace's shaking hand. "What did we find?" he asked, a hard edge to his voice. Jace met his gaze, a mix of fear and tenacity in the engineer's eyes. The Tellarites nearly had a working anti-sword weapon, some kind of disruptor field to negate the blade's energy manipulation. The files I pulled show how close they were. He paused, glancing out the viewport at the receding jungle below, glowing with the flames engulfing the ruined research base. "This intel might let us develop a countermeasure, but we'll need time and resources, neither of which we have much of now," Jace finished grimly. Austin leaned back, the weight of command settling over him like a suffocating mantle. The stolen Tellarite data represented a chance, slim and desperate, to preserve the ancient sword's power, and with it, humanity's fading hopes. But the cost in lives and materiel would be staggering, and Murloc's forces drew closer every day. As the dropship angled towards the rebel stronghold, Austin fixed his gaze on the shimmering blade resting across his knees, the weapon that had ignited the fires of resistance, that had given them a fighting chance against the Tellarites' overwhelming might. Its energy pulsed in time with his heartbeat, ancient runes flickering with unspoken promise and power. The sword had brought them this far. Austin silently vowed that he would not let it fail them now, no matter the sacrifice required. The battle and humanity's future hung in the balance, the scales poised to tip on the courage and willpower of a handful of desperate rebels, and on the edge of that ancient, star-forged blade. Austin's fingers tightened around the hilt as the dropship touched down at the rebel stronghold. The ancient weapon had bought them time, but Murloc's retaliation was inevitable. Days blurred as the rebels fortified their base, guided by Jace's frantic efforts to implement countermeasures against Tellarite anti-sword technology. Austin prowled the perimeter, his enhanced blade humming with restless energy. The horizon erupted in flames as Murloc's armada entered low orbit. Massive warships blotted out the stars, their hulls overflowing with weaponry. On the ground, swarms of Tellarite troop transports and armored vehicles advanced through the jungle. "It's time," Austin said, his voice steady as he addressed the assembled rebel leadership. "We strike now, before they can bring their full might to bear." Under cover of darkness, Austin led an elite team towards the Tellarite fleet. They slipped past sentry drones, scaling the pitted hull of a supply shuttle as it docked with Murloc's flagship. The cavernous hangar bay stretched before them, a hive of activity as Tellarite crew prepared for the ground assault. Austin's blade flashed, cutting down the first guards before they could raise the alarm. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air as more Tellarites converged on their position. The rebels fought their way deeper into the ship, leaving chaos in their wake. "This way!" Zara hissed, gesturing towards a bank of computer terminals. "The bombardment controls are just ahead." A thunderous impact shook the deck plates. General Kresh strode into view, flanked by a squad of heavily armored commandos. "So predictable, human," he sneered. "Did you think we wouldn't anticipate your desperation?" Austin raised his sword in silent challenge. Kresh's troops opened fire, their energy weapons crackling against the blade's protective field. The rebel leader spun and weaved, each strike of his sword finding gaps in Tellarite armor. Kresh bellowed in rage, activating an energy shield of his own as he charged Austin. Their duel was a blur of crackling energy and ringing metal. Austin's enhanced reflexes kept him one step ahead, but Kresh's raw power was overwhelming. A lucky blow sent Austin sprawling. Kresh loomed over him, energy blade poised for the kill. With the last of his strength, Austin swept the ancient sword in a wide arc. It sheared through Kresh's defenses, biting deep into alien flesh. As Kresh fell, Austin staggered to his feet. Blood streamed from a dozen wounds, but he forced himself towards the bombardment controls. His vision swam as he plunged the sword into the delicate circuitry. Arcs of energy coursed through the system, overloading plasma cannons shipwide. Alarms blared as the rebels fought their way back to their shuttle. Austin collapsed the moment they cleared the hangar, his life ebbing away even as Murlock's crippled flagship retreated from orbit. The journey back to the rebel base passed in a haze of pain. Austin drifted in and out of consciousness, vaguely aware of frantic voices and the pressure of emergency treatments. When he finally clawed his way back to awareness, the situation had become dire. Tellarite forces had the base surrounded. The artificial night of their orbital blockade was lit by the constant flashes of energy weapons and explosions. Austin could hear the sounds of battle drawing closer with each passing minute. He struggled to rise, every movement sending waves of agony through his body. Zara appeared at his side, supporting him as he reached for the sword. "You can't," she pleaded. "Your wounds—" "If I don't, we all die," Austin growled. He grasped the hilt, drawing strength from the ancient weapon's pulsing energy. Together they made their way to the command center. What remained of the rebel force had been pushed back to this final strongpoint. Exhausted fighters turned at Austin's approach, hope kindling in their eyes. Austin raised the sword high, its gleaming blade a beacon in the gloom. "With me!" he roared, his voice carrying over the din of battle. "For humanity!" As one, the rebels surged forward. Austin's blade sang as it cleaved through Tellarite armor, each strike precise despite his injuries. Energy bolts splashed harmlessly against the sword's protective field as he carved a path through the enemy lines. The tide of battle shifted. Inspired by their leader's resilience, the rebels fought with renewed vigor. But for every Tellarite they felled, more poured in to take their place. Austin's strength was fading fast, the sword growing heavier in his grasp with each passing moment. He found himself face to face with Murloc himself, the Tellarite overlord's eyes burning with hatred. As their blades clashed in a shower of sparks, the fate of two species hung in the balance. Balance as their blades locked. Murloc's cybernetic enhancements gave him inhuman strength, but Austin's mastery of the ancient sword allowed him to match the Tellarite blow for blow. Austin's wounds screamed in protest as he parried a vicious overhead strike. Blood seeped through his makeshift bandages, staining his tattered uniform. He stumbled, barely deflecting Murloc's follow-up attack. The Tellarite warlord pressed his advantage, raining down blows that sent shockwaves through Austin's arms with each impact. "Your resistance ends here, human," Murloc snarled, his plasma cannon whining as it charged for a killing shot. In that moment, Austin felt a surge of energy flow through the ancient blade. The sword's runes blazed with newfound intensity, the countermeasures Jace had implemented, amplifying its power beyond anything they had witnessed before. Austin roared, channeling every ounce of his being into a single, devastating strike. The sword cleaved through the air, its energy projection elongating the blade to impossible lengths. Murloc's eyes widened in shock as the attack sheared through his cybernetic arm, severing it at the shoulder. The warlord staggered back, howling in pain and disbelief. Austin pressed forward, his blade a blur of motion as he carved through Murloc's elite guard. Around him, the remaining rebels rallied to his side, their fierce persistence matching the renewed power of the ancient weapon. Zara's voice crackled over the comms. "Austin, I've breached their command network. Uploading false orders now." Confusion spread through the Tellarite ranks as contradictory commands flooded their tactical displays. Austin seized the opportunity, leading a charge that drove deep into the heart of the alien formation. The sword's energy projections tore through armor and weaponry alike, leaving a wake of destruction in their path. As the tide of battle shifted, Austin caught glimpses of heroism among his fellow rebels. Marcus darted between cover, planting explosives that sent Tellarite war machines toppling. Jace coordinated their efforts from a makeshift command post, his fingers flying over holographic interfaces as he directed their limited air support for maximum effect. A plasma bolt sizzled past Austin's ear, snapping his attention back to the immediate threat. Murloc had regained his footing, his remaining organic arm hefting a massive energy cannon. The weapon's barrel glowed with gathering power, aimed squarely at Zara's position. "No!" Austin shouted, sprinting towards his comrade. Time seemed to slow as he saw Marcus leap into action, tackling Zara out of harm's way just as Murloc fired. The energy blast caught Marcus full in the chest, vaporizing him instantly. Grief and rage fueled Austin's final charge. The ancient sword sang in his hands as he closed the distance to Murloc. The Tellarite warlord's eyes widened in fear as he realized his weapon was still cycling, leaving him defenseless. With a battle cry that echoed across the ravaged landscape, Austin brought the sword down in a two-handed strike. The blade bit deep, carving through Murloc's armor and into the flesh beneath. The warlord collapsed, his fearsome presence reduced to a broken figure at Austin's feet. "Surrender," Austin growled, the tip of his sword hovering inches from Murloc's throat. "Order your forces to stand down." Murloc's eyes darted frantically, searching for any sign of rescue. Finding none, he slumped in defeat. "All units," he rasped into his comm, "cease fire and power down your weapons. We surrender." A stunned silence fell over the battlefield, punctuated only by the crackle of fires and the groans of the wounded. Austin's legs trembled, threatening to give out as the adrenaline faded and the full weight of his injuries reasserted itself. Zara appeared at his side, her face streaked with tears and grime. She placed a steadying hand on his shoulder, her voice thick with emotion. "We did it, Austin. We actually did it." Austin nodded wearily, his gaze sweeping across the devastation that surrounded them. The rebel base lay in ruins, the cost of their victory etched in blood and broken bodies. Yet amidst the carnage, he saw the first stirrings of hope in the eyes of his fellow humans. As rebel medics rushed to tend the wounded and secure their Tellarite prisoners, Austin's attention was drawn to the sword in his hands. Its glow had dimmed, the runes no longer pulsing with otherworldly power. He felt a deep weariness settle into his bones, a sense that the weapon had given all it could in this final, desperate battle. Jace limped towards them, his face a mix of triumph and concern. "Austin, you need to see this," he said, holding out a datapad. "I'm picking up transmissions from the Tellarite fleet. There's chaos up there, factions arguing over what to do next. Some are even calling for negotiations." Austin absorbed the information, his mind racing with the implications. They had achieved more than just a military victory. They had shaken the very foundations of Tellarite superiority. As he contemplated their next move, Austin realized that the true challenge lay ahead, forging a lasting peace from the ashes of war.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.